It started with the music, soft jazz drifting through the flower-scented evening air, and the warm clink of wine glasses echoing across the garden. Lanterns strung between trees lit the party in a romantic golden glow, while laughter and perfume tangled like ivy around the patio railings. Brooke's hand was warm in mine as we stepped onto the flagstone path. Her white dress, flowing and simple, caught the breeze just enough to stir the fabric against her thighs. For a moment, I felt lucky, proud even. My wife, radiant under the dim lights, smiling easily at our friends. I caught a few glances from other men, lingering just a second too long on her figure, and I felt that familiar rush. Yeah, she's mine. But as the night wore on, that feeling shifted. At first, it was subtle. She let go of my hand when someone called her name, someone I didn't see. I wandered off to grab drinks for us, thinking nothing of it. When I returned, she was talking with Chase. Chase, the guy with the too perfect smile and the kind of effortless charm that always seemed just a bit too rehearsed. We'd known him for years, a mutual friend, part of the extended group, the guy who always showed up to parties with a bottle of red and a story just interesting enough to earn everyone's attention. He was handsome in that artfully scruffy way, and I'd never once questioned the little flirtations he tossed around. He flirted with everyone. It was harmless. At least, it used to be. Brooke didn't see me right away. She was laughing, eyes bright, one hand resting on Chase's forearm like it had always belonged there. I stood about 10 feet away, holding 2 glasses of Chardonnay, watching the way her body angled toward him. Close. Too close. She finally caught sight of me, and something in her face changed, just for a second. That easy smile flickered. She stepped back a half-inch. "Oh, hey, babe," she said as I handed her the drink. "We were just talking about that trip to Sonoma." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah? The one we were planning, or the one you took with your work friends?" She blinked. "The one Chase was on a while back. I was saying how beautiful the vineyards are." Chase raised his glass, eyes locked on mine. "Some of the best wine I've ever had, honestly. You two should go sometime." I raised mine in return, hollowly. "We should." It didn't stop there. Later, while mingling with another couple, I looked across the garden and saw them again. Chase had pulled her onto the makeshift dance floor. The music was something slow, something intimate. Her arms looped around his shoulders, his hands resting casually on her waist. They swayed together, and her head tilted back as she laughed at something he said, her face glowing in the soft lights. I didn't know what bothered me more, the fact that she looked so natural in his arms, or that I wasn't the only one noticing. I caught Kara, one of Brooke's old college roommates, watching them too. Her expression was unreadable, but when her eyes met mine, she looked away too quickly. That moment stuck with me. I tried to shake it off. Parties are weird like that. Wine flows, people dance, everyone lets their guard down a little. But as I stood alone near the rose trellis, sipping warm white wine, I noticed the patterns. The way Brooke laughed with him, a low, breathy sound I hadn't heard in months. The way her fingers brushed his chest lightly when she made a point, something she'd once done to me, back when things between us felt electric. The way she didn't once look for me during that dance. Later in the evening, when I finally pulled her aside and asked if she wanted to head home soon, she barely looked at me. "What? Already? Adam, it's just getting fun." I tried to laugh. "Well, I didn't realize you were trying to close down the place." Her lips curved into a smirk, one I didn't recognize. "Maybe I am." I didn't respond, just looked at her for a long second, then turned to get another drink I didn't need. Around midnight, the party began to thin out. Couples left in pairs, a few friends lingered for last pours and lazy goodbyes. Chase had disappeared somewhere. I didn't see Brooke say goodbye to him. Maybe she already had. In the car, ride home, silence stretched between us like barbed wire. Her phone buzzed once. She checked it and smiled faintly, quickly turning the screen away from me. "Something funny?" I asked. "Just a meme from Carly." I didn't ask to see it. I didn't believe her. That night, as she slipped into bed beside me, still faintly smelling like the lavender and wine of the party, she pressed a soft kiss to my shoulder and turned away. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly I became invisible to my wife. The next morning, The scent of coffee drifted from the kitchen, but Brooke wasn't there. Just a half-empty mug with a lipstick mark on the rim and a plate with the crust of toast pushed to one side. I poured myself a cup, already lukewarm, and sat at the island wondering if I was imagining things. Overreacting to a dance, to a few drinks, to my own insecurities. She came down later, hair still wet from the shower, towel wrapped tightly around her body. She kissed my cheek with the barest contact and said, "Morning," without looking at me. "You left early," I said. "I couldn't sleep." "You didn't say goodbye." She shrugged, pouring herself another coffee. "You were out. I didn't want to wake you." I nodded, forcing down the feeling gnawing at my gut. I watched her closely, the way she avoided eye contact, how she clutched the towel a little too tightly, like she needed something to hold on to. "You danced with Chase a lot last night," I said carefully. Brooke blinked, still not meeting my gaze. He asked, "It was a party." "Yeah, but you look pretty close." Her tone sharpened just a notch. "What are you implying, Adam?" I sighed. "I'm not implying anything. Just saying it looked intimate." She set her mug down, eyes finally meeting mine. "You're being paranoid." "Maybe." She turned and walked upstairs, her coffee untouched. Over the next few days, it became a pattern. Her glances darting away when I looked too long, her hands always busy with something to avoid touch, her smiles tight, manufactured. The warmth I used to feel from her, that subtle, unspoken electricity, gone, replaced by something brittle, cautious. At dinner, she scrolled through her phone constantly, screen turned away. I joked, "Should I be jealous of whoever gets more of your attention than I do?" She laughed dryly. "I'm just reading an article. You can read it too if you want." I didn't ask her to send it. I didn't want to know if it was a lie. Nights were the worst. We still slept in the same bed, but I'd never felt farther away from her. Her body curled toward the edge, her back to me. I used to trace her spine with my fingertips. Now I didn't even dare brush her arm. Every time I tried to touch her, she tensed, subtly, but enough. Sex had been absent for weeks. At first, I chalked it up to stress, her work, or mine. But now, it felt like something more intentional, and the silence between us screamed louder than any words. I kept replaying the party in my mind, the closeness, the laughter, the smile she gave Chase. It wasn't the same smile she gave me. It hadn't been for a long time. Still, I tried to let it go, tried to pretend. I bought her flowers, lilies, her favorite. She thanked me, set them in water, and then left them to wilt untouched on the windowsill. One night, while looking for a charger in her nightstand drawer, I found something strange, a small brass key. Old-fashioned, intricately detailed. It didn't match anything I recognized. Curious, I checked under the bed, running my hand along the baseboard until I felt something solid. A small wooden box tucked far back against the wall. The kind of box that wasn't meant to be found unless you were really looking for it. I pulled it out. It was heavier than it looked. The lock was simple, but the wood was worn, like it had been opened and closed 1,000 times. I hesitated. I shouldn't. I knew that. But my hand moved on its own, sliding the key into the lock. Click. It didn't open it. Not yet. Just the sound of possibility. I put it back, sliding the box back into its hiding place, heart thudding in my chest. I couldn't explain it, but something about that moment shifted everything. The way the key felt warm in my palm, like it held something personal, sacred, even, and not mine. That night, Brooke came to bed late. Her skin smelled faintly of someone else's cologne, not mine, not hers. And when I asked her how work was, she just said, "Busy." Then she turned out the light and rolled away. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting her breaths. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and it wasn't just my imagination anymore. The box, the coldness, the distance, the lies. They were starting to stack up like bricks around my chest. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending I didn't feel buried alive. It took me 2 more days before I gave in. The key sat on my nightstand like a silent dare. Every time I looked at it, I thought, maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm reading into all this too much. But deep down I knew, the body doesn't lie. Neither does instinct. And everything in me screamed that whatever was in that box wasn't meant for me to see, which made it all the more necessary. Brooke left for work early that morning. kissed my cheek with a practiced smile, and said, "Don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning." I nodded, watched her car pull out of the driveway, waited 15 full minutes just to be sure. Then I went upstairs. I didn't hesitate this time. I dropped to my knees, reached under the bed, and pulled the wooden box out from its hiding place. The key slid in cleanly. One soft twist, and the latch gave. The lid creaked open. Inside, there was no jewelry, no money, nothing that explained why it had been hidden for so long. Just paper, a neat stack of yellowed envelopes, tied with a thin red ribbon. They smelled faintly of cedar and something older, nostalgia, maybe regret. I untied the ribbon and pulled the top letter free. Her name was on the envelope. Just Brooke, written in ink that had slightly faded over time. The handwriting wasn't hers. It was bold, confident, slanted in a way that suggested someone who never second-guessed what they felt. I opened it. "Brooke, I keep telling myself I'll stop writing you, that it's pointless, that I'm a fool to keep pretending we ever had a real shot. But then I see you at these parties, wearing his ring, smiling like nothing ever touched you, and I can't help myself. You say you're happy. I want to believe that. I want to believe you chose well. But every time I see you, I think about that night in the rain, about your mouth on mine, about the things we swore we'd never tell anyone else. If I ever meant anything to you, then you already know this truth. I never stopped loving you." See, my chest tightened. I set the letter down and reached for the next one, dated almost a decade ago. They went back years. Some were longer, overflowing with memories and apologies. Others were short and sharp, like he'd written them in a fit of passion and mailed them without thinking. But the message was always the same. I still want you. I never stopped. Some referenced stolen weekends, days that didn't line up with anything she'd told me over the years. Some described her in ways I'd never seen her. Wild, spontaneous, laughing barefoot in the back of someone's truck. A Brooke I didn't know existed. But the worst part, the most devastating part, was the way she wrote back. Because she did. Several of the envelopes contained her replies, or pieces of them, sometimes scrawled on torn pages, sometimes on hotel stationery. I recognized her handwriting instantly. She wasn't just reading these. She was participating. You're always in my head. Sometimes, when I'm with Adam, I have to close my eyes because I'm scared he'll see it, see you behind them. I stopped there, closed the box. My hand was shaking. I sat on the edge of the bed, letters scattered on the duvet, my mind spinning. How long? That was the question echoing through my skull like a drumbeat. How long have I been loving someone who belonged to someone else? I stared down at my wedding ring. We'd been married for 8 years, but some of these letters dated back to before the proposal. A few were even older, at least 10 years ago, before me. But that wasn't the part that undid me. It was the dates that weren't before me. One from 2 years ago, one from last year, one from 4 months ago. That letter was different. It was more poetic, almost haunting. "I saw you last weekend, standing next to him. I wanted to grab your hand and walk you out of that party, throw you into my car and drive until the guilt stopped clawing at me. But I didn't, because that's not who you are anymore. Except, I think you are, at least with me. We're always better in the shadows, aren't we?" I folded that one back slowly, like it might burn me. That was after our trip to Seattle. I remembered it because I'd surprised her with a private rooftop dinner, and she'd cried, told me I was the only man who ever made her feel safe. She was still seeing him, still letting him write her, still writing back. I put everything back into the box, carefully, quietly, like a man putting his life back in its coffin. I slid it under the bed, and I sat there, for hours. When Brooke came home that evening, she didn't say much. Neither did I. We danced around each other like ghosts. She asked if I had a headache. I told her I was tired. She didn't press. Later, in the shower, I heard her humming. Soft, carefree. It made my skin crawl, because now I knew something I could never unknow. Chase wasn't just some friend. He was the ghost in our marriage, the one who'd never left. After that night, I became someone else. Quiet, watchful, the kind of man who pretends to forget his wallet so he can double back and check his wife's phone screen as she leaves it unlocked. The kind of man who listens through doors. The kind who smiles in group photos while his stomach rots. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I needed more than just letters. Because part of me still didn't want it to be true. Maybe she kept the letters out of guilt. Maybe she hadn't responded in years. Maybe, God help me, maybe they were all written before. Before us. Before the ring. But then Chase started showing up again. Little things. An invite to drinks with friends. Oh, Chase is coming too. Haven't seen him in forever. Or a group hike. It'll be nice to catch up. Each time, she said it like he was just a name in the crowd. But I watched her when he arrived. Her eyes changed. There was a softness in her voice, a spark when she leaned toward him that wasn't there with anyone else. Not even me. I began to document. Not in notebooks, but in my head. Every lingering glance. Every laugh she gave him that she used to save for me. Every time her fingers grazed his arm for just a second too long. At a friend's birthday dinner, I watched as he pulled out her chair. She smiled at him in a way that made my stomach twist, not just affectionate, but familiar. Like he already knew what that smile meant. Like he'd seen it from angles I never had. That night, I went home and dug deeper. I pulled out our old hard drive, the one that had all our photos from before cloud backups were a thing. I started going through them year by year. And there he was, in the background of our engagement party, glass raised in a toast. In a blurry photo from our honeymoon send-off, his hand resting casually on her back. At our wedding, standing just a few people down from me during the rehearsal dinner, smiling like he belonged there. The sickening part? I remembered shaking his hand that night. I remembered saying, "Glad you could make it, man." The pictures told a different story now. A darker one. One where his eyes always found her. One where her smile for him looked less like polite laughter and more like something else. I opened her old Facebook albums, the ones from before we got married. I scrolled, heart racing. A road trip to Napa. Just her and a few friends. One picture stopped me cold. Her in a sundress, sitting on a blanket in a vineyard, wine in hand. He was lying beside her, shirt open, hand just a little too close to her thigh. She was looking at the camera. He was looking at her. I checked the date. 6 months before our first official date. But another showed up almost a year later. They weren't just old flames. There was something that lingered. Something that clearly never ended. The next day, I searched her emails. I know how that sounds. I know what kind of man that makes me. But trust had already become a corpse in our marriage. All I could do now was perform the autopsy. Nothing explicit. Nothing dirty. Brooke wasn't careless. But buried in the archive folder, under a mass of clutter, I found one thread that stopped me cold. It was titled Brunch Catch Up. Great seeing you today. You haven't changed at all. I forgot how easy it is with you. Let me know next time you're free. Maybe without the whole group? I think we need a real talk. No emojis. No hearts. Just too much between the lines. The reply from her was short. 2 lines. Next Friday. He's working late. I'll make up something. Don't be late this time, Chase. No location. No details. But it was all there. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. All this time, years of marriage, shared holidays, fights and makeups, hospital visits, vacations, she'd been carrying someone else inside her. Maybe not physically, maybe not always in bed, but emotionally, undeniably. She wasn't just my wife. She was his ghost. That night, I lay next to her in bed, watching the rise and fall of her breath. She stirred slightly, mumbling something, reaching in her sleep to rest her hand against my chest. It made my skin crawl, because I didn't know if she was reaching for me, or if she was dreaming of him. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I wanted the truth. But more than that, I wanted them to see what betrayal felt like when it stopped being a secret. I wanted it to bleed in the daylight. The thing about betrayal is this. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It doesn't fade. It etches itself into your vision, like the afterburn of a flash you stared at too long. And it changes everything. I stopped asking questions. I stopped reaching for her in bed. I stopped waiting for honesty to come. Instead, I started planning. It started with a casual suggestion over dinner. Been thinking we should do a weekend with the old crew, I said between bites of pasta. We haven't all been together in forever. Brooke blinked, surprised. Really? I nodded. Yeah, cabin, some drinks, no cell service. Get back to the basics. Like the old days. She smiled. And for a moment, I caught a flicker of the woman I married. "I'd love that," she said, her voice warmer than it had been in weeks. "That sounds really good." It almost made me hesitate. Almost. "Think we should invite Chase?" I added, as casually as I could manage. Brooke paused, just slightly, a millisecond hiccup, but I saw it. She took a sip of wine before answering. "Sure, he's part of the group." "Exactly," I said, smiling. I played my part flawlessly. Sent out the group text that night. Handpicked the invite list, our tight-knit circle from college, and just after. Enough people to mask the setup, but not enough to lose control of the room. Everyone agreed. A few questions about who's bringing what, who's driving who. Nothing out of the ordinary. Brooke volunteered to help coordinate food. Chase offered to bring the good bourbon, like always. I told them I'd handle the reservations. And I did. I booked a place we used to go before we got married. A rustic A-frame tucked into a secluded pine stretch, with a fireplace, creaky floorboards, and a long wooden table perfect for shared meals or stage confrontations. I started preparing. Not just logistics, mentally, emotionally. I rehearsed it in my mind 1,000 times. How it might happen, who would break first, whether I'd say anything at all, or just let the truth unravel in front of everyone. I even pulled one of Chase's letters, the one with the phrase, "We're always better in the shadows, aren't we?" and slid it into my suitcase, folded tight, just in case I needed ammunition. The night before the trip, Brooke was glowing. It was subtle, but I noticed it. The way she packed with more energy, the way she double-checked her hair, tried on 2 jackets before settling on one. She even kissed me on the mouth before bed, like she was grateful, excited. Maybe she thought this trip was a reset. Maybe she thought I'd stopped noticing. The truth was, I'd never seen her more clearly. Friday came fast. We packed the car with duffels, sleeping bags, way too much wine, and that hum of tension just below the surface. The drive was long, winding through golden trees and quiet mountain roads. Brooke talked about her playlist, her old friends, how nice it'll be to unplug. I smiled. The kind of smile you wear to a funeral when you already know the eulogy by heart. Everyone arrived in waves. Kara and her boyfriend Tom. Jenna, solo, still freshly bitter after her last breakup. Then Chase, arriving late, as always, with bourbon in one hand and that easy, rehearsed charm in the other. Look who decided to show. I called from the deck, already holding a beer. Chase grinned. Wouldn't miss it. He hugged Brooke first. I watched her chest rise as she inhaled the scent of him. Then she smiled, soft and sideways, like she used to with me years ago. That was the first cut of the weekend. There would be more. Dinner that night was a warm buzz of old stories, cheap wine, and laughter that came in fits and starts. I kept my face relaxed, my tone light. I toasted to reunions, made a joke about how we're all getting older, but no one's growing up. Everyone laughed, but I watched them all. The way Brooke and Chase sat opposite each other, not side by side, but directly aligned, like invisible strings pulled them into symmetry. The way she refilled his glass before anyone else's. The way he called her Brookie and she didn't correct him. She hadn't let me call her that since the first year of our marriage. Later that night, as everyone drifted toward rooms and couches, I stood out on the porch with Chase. Just us, sharing a quiet nightcap. The bourbon burned sweet. "You ever miss it?" I asked. Chase raised an eyebrow. "Miss what?" "The old days. Simpler times. No motives, no deadlines. No guilt." He tilted his head, smile faltering. "Yeah, sometimes. First loves are hard to forget, right?" There it was. That flicker. He tried to cover it. Looked away. Exhaled through his nose. "Guess so. Do you ever think about how unresolved things get when people pretend to move on?" His jaw tensed just slightly, but he didn't answer. He just drank. Back inside, I tucked the letter into the outer pocket of his duffel bag. Folded carefully, placed with purpose. I wanted him to find it at just the right time. I didn't need to say a word. The letter would do all the talking. As I lay next to Brooke that night, listening to the wind slide through the trees, I felt strangely calm. Not vengeful, not even angry, just ready. Because for once, the secrets weren't mine to carry anymore. And tomorrow, around the fire, I would light the match that would burn the lies clean to the ground. Morning came with the sound of wind rustling through pine needles and the sharp scent of wood smoke curling up from the fire pit someone had rekindled. The air had that crisp, alpine bite that made every breath feel a little cleaner, a little more honest. A few of our friends were already gathered outside, mugs in hand, faces puffy with sleep and alcohol. Brooke stood near the railing wrapped in a fleece blanket, sipping her coffee, her hair twisted into a lazy knot. She looked beautiful, peaceful even. It made me angry, because I knew that look wasn't for me. Chase emerged late, always last, always fashionably unaware. He stretched, yawned loudly, made a joke about the death trap mattress he'd slept on. Brooke laughed, just a little too loudly, but he didn't look at her. Not really. Not the way he had the night before. No, Chase had read the letter. I could see it in the tension around his eyes, the way his shoulders were just a little too rigid, the way he glanced toward me when he thought I wasn't watching. Checkmate, I thought, but not yet. The day passed in a slow, deliberate haze. Everyone took turns doing what old friends do, hiking short trails, cooking easy food, telling recycled stories that still somehow made us laugh. But beneath all that, the cabin pulsed with something unspoken. The energy had changed. Brooke noticed it too. She kept looking at Chase like she was waiting for something, a signal, a wink, a word that never came. He gave her nothing, and I made sure to give him everything. At one point, while helping stack firewood for the night, I caught him alone. "You sleep okay?" I asked. He looked up quickly. "Yeah, fine. Did you get a chance to check your bag this morning?" He froze, just long enough to answer every question I hadn't asked. No, didn't really unpack. He lied too quickly. I smiled. "You should. Never know what you'll find." And then I walked away. Lunch was strained. Someone brought up an old inside joke from college, and Kara laughed so hard she snorted wine through her nose. But Brooke wasn't part of it. Her eyes were somewhere else, on Chase, who still wouldn't meet them. She tried once, a subtle brush of her foot beneath the table. I watched his reaction from across the deck, a full-body flinch. She pulled her leg back like it had been burned. And just like that, she was no longer glowing. She was unraveling. That afternoon, I cornered Jenna while we were making a new batch of drinks in the kitchen. She was one of Brooke's closest friends, but she'd always been weirdly perceptive, quiet, unafraid to look where others politely looked away. "So," I said, keeping my tone light, "what do you think of Chase these days?" She glanced at me over her shoulder. "You asking as a friend or a husband?" I gave her a half-smile. "Maybe both." Jenna hesitated, then leaned in. "I'll just say this. The way they look at each other, it's not new. It's not casual. And it's not something I ever wanted to say out loud." I didn't respond, just squeezed her shoulder. She gave me a sad look, like she already knew what was coming. And maybe, in her own way, she was relieved someone was finally willing to set it on fire. Dinner came and went, quieter than the night before. Brooke barely touched her food. Chase drank more than usual. The others felt it, the undercurrent, the twitching silence, but no one could name it. Not yet. I waited until everyone had settled outside around the fire pit, bundled in blankets, bourbon in hand, laughter starting to melt the frost from the air again. Then I began to poke the bear. "So," I said, swirling my drink, voice low, steady, "let's play a game." Brooke glanced at me. "What kind of game?" "Something different," I said. "Nos chirals. No drinking games. Letes do confessions. Honest ones. Raw stuff. Things we've never said out loud. Groans. Laughs. A few eye rolls. But curiosity, too." "What? Like truth or dare for grown-ups?" Kara asked. "Exactly," I said. "But no dares. Just truths." Chase shifted in his seat. I took another sip. "I'll start," I said. "Here's mine. I think people lie more to themselves than to anyone else." Everyone quieted. They say they moved on when they haven't. Say they love one person when their heart is still tangled up in someone else. Brooke turned toward me, her brow furrowing. And sometimes, I continued, they pretend the past is over, when really they're still living in it, writing it, feeding it. The silence now wasn't just curious. It was loaded. Brooke's eyes searched mine. "What are you trying to say?" I looked at her, then at Chase. "Nothing," I said with a small smile. Just thinking out loud. But Chase was pale now. "And Brooke?" She was starting to realize the game wasn't just a game. Tomorrow, the truth would no longer be subtle. Tomorrow, I'd read the letter aloud. But tonight, I wanted them to sweat. Let the fire warm their skin while the cold truth crept slowly up their spines. The flames crackled low, throwing shadows across our faces as we circled the fire. There was a strange stillness in the air. Not peace, not comfort. More like a collective breath held too long. Jenna topped off her wine and let her legs stretch toward the warmth. Kara and Tom huddled under a blanket, whispering back and forth. Brooke sat across from me, cross-legged, her hoodie zipped to her throat, eyes flicking between the logs and Chase. And Chase. Chase hadn't said a word in 20 minutes. It was time. Okay, I said, standing slowly, holding a folded piece of paper between my fingers. My turn. Some laughter. A few playful groans. Another confession? Jenna asked, eyebrow raised. I smiled faintly. Not mine, but someone's. I felt the tension in the air the moment I spoke those words. Like an invisible string suddenly pulled taut between every person around that fire. Brooke shifted. Adam. I raised a hand. It's anonymous, I said. Let's just say, I found it, and I've been sitting with it for a while. No one spoke. Even the fire seemed to quiet. I unfolded the letter slowly, like it was delicate, sacred. I knew every word by heart now, but I read it like it was new, like it hurt me fresh. Brooke, I keep telling myself I'll stop writing you, that it's pointless, that I'm a fool to keep pretending we ever had a real shot. But then I see you at these parties, wearing his ring, smiling like nothing ever touched you, and I can't help myself. You say you're happy. I want to believe that. I want to believe you chose well. But every time I see you, I think about that night in the rain, about your mouth on mine, about the things we swore we'd never tell anyone else. If I ever meant anything to you, then you already know this truth. I never stopped loving you. See, when I finished, I looked up. No one moved. Brooke stared at me like I'd just spoken in a language she wasn't fluent in anymore. Chase was frozen, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might snap. The fire popped. A log split. Kara whispered, "Wait, what?" I held the letter up, the pages trembling slightly in my hand. "It's old," I said, "but not that old. And it's real. I found it hidden in our bedroom." Brooke's voice cracked. "Adam, what the hell are you doing?" "I thought it was a love letter," I said softly, until I realized it wasn't written by me. The silence was loud, a freight train roaring through every unspoken word we'd all tried to bury for years. "You don't know who wrote that," she said quickly, her voice tight. "It could have been anything. Some old boyfriend before we ever." "It wasn't," I said. "It was Chase." Jenna sucked in a breath. "Tom straten bisaid kara." Even the trees seemed to lean in closer. Brooke shook her head, eyes wide. "You don't know that. He signed at sea," I said, stepping closer to the fire. "And I found more. A whole box. Letters from him. And from you." That last part landed like a hammer. Chase stood suddenly. "Adam, maybe this isn't the time." My eyes flicked to him. "You don't get to decide that anymore." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Brooke was still seated, but she looked like someone had poured ice water into her lungs. "You went through my things?" "I was looking for a charger," I said. "What I found was our entire marriage rotting beneath the bed." Jenna stood now, too, clearly uncomfortable. "Okay, maybe we should take a breath." "No," I said quietly. "No more breaths. No more pretending." I turned to Chase. "You loved her, didn't you?" He didn't answer. I looked at Brooke. "You still love him?" She said nothing. Her hands were in her lap, clenched so tightly her knuckles were bone white. The silence dragged. Kara was the first to move. She stood and walked off into the trees, shaking her head, muttering something about being lied to. Tom followed her without a word. Jenna stood frozen, caught between outrage and pity. And Chase. Chase looked like he wanted to run. But Brooke finally spoke. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." Soft. Shattered. Too late. I nodded. "Yeah, me too." Then I tossed the letter into the fire. We all watched it catch. The flames licked up the edges, curling the paper, devouring the truth we'd all refused to say aloud until now. It didn't matter anymore. They heard it. All of them. And now the silence that followed wasn't safety. It was judgment. The letter turned to ash in the fire, but its words lingered like smoke in our lungs. Impossible to swallow, harder to ignore. The group was splintering. Kara and Tom had already disappeared into the trees, and Jenna stood near the cabin door, arms crossed, eyes flicking between all of us like she was watching a train wreck, but couldn't look away. The only ones still seated were me, Brooke, and Chase. Brooke finally stood. "No," she said sharply, her voice louder than I'd heard in weeks. "You don't get to do this, Adam. Not like this." I blinked. "Not like this? You want to tell me what the right way is to confront my wife about the man she's loved behind my back for years?" Brooke's face twisted. "I told you it was before. Years ago. It wasn't." I stepped closer. "It wasn't before. Don't insult me." Chase cleared his throat like he had something to add, then thought better of it. I turned on him. "No, please. Let's hear it. You've had all the words for her, right? Every goddamn letter dripping with nostalgia and poetic bullshit. So go ahead. Say something to me for once." He finally looked up. His voice was low. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I laughed. A harsh, humorless sound. "It never is." Brooke's voice rose. "We never slept together. Not since the wedding." That stung more than I expected. Not because of what she said, but because it was the only part she thought needed defending. "So you almost cheated?" "For years. Emotionally, consistently. But not physically, so that makes it okay." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. "I buried my doubts for years, Brooke," I continued. "I swallowed every instinct, every late-night phone call, every lie wrapped in a half-truth. I trusted you. I built my life around the idea that you loved me enough to tell the truth." Chase tried again. "I never meant for it to get." "Save it," I snapped. "You're not a victim. You're not even a mistake. Your choice." One she kept making over and over while wearing my ring. He looked away, jaw tight. Jenna finally spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. "Jesus, Brooke, how long has this been going on?" Brooke didn't answer. "You know what's crazy?" I said, pacing now, unable to stop the flood. "You had chances. You could have come clean. You could have told me you had feelings you hadn't dealt with. But instead, you let him write you letters like some tragic fucking romance novel. And you kept them. You kept them, Brooke. You read them when you missed him, didn't you?" She didn't deny it. "Do you know how sick it feels to realize the man I've shaken hands with, poured drinks for, laughed with, was picturing you the entire time? Probably remembering what your skin felt like. Probably remembering the way you sound when you—" "Stop," she snapped. The fire popped. "I loved you," she said suddenly, voice cracking. "I do love you. But, I asked." She hesitated. And that pause, that half-second of silence, that was all I needed. I shook my head, something breaking loose inside me. "There it is." Jenna looked horrified. "You two were supposed to be the solid ones." "Yeah," I muttered. "So was the house I grew up in." Didn't stop it from collapsing. Brooke stepped toward me, voice softer now, trying to claw something back. "Adam, please. I didn't mean to hurt you. It got out of control. I never stopped loving you." "But you never stopped loving him either," I cut in. "That's the part that matters." Silence fell again. Someone, I think it was Jenna, whispered, "Holy shit." Behind me, someone dry-heaved. I turned just in time to see Tom, pale and sweating, stumble out from the trees. Kara was with him, try to help him stand. Tom's voice slurred. I can't believe this." Then he vomited into the pine needles. Another log cracked in the fire. Chase stepped back, clearly rattled, running a hand through his hair. "I'm leaving." "Good," I said. "Take your lies with you." He hesitated for a moment, as if expecting Brooke to follow. She didn't. He left. No words. No bouvier. Just the sound of boots, crunching dirt, and shame. Brooke sat back down by the fire. Shoulders slumped. Face gray. "What now?" she whispered. I looked at her for a long moment. And for the first time, I didn't see the woman I'd married. I saw someone else. A stranger. A ghost who'd worn my wife's face while loving another man behind my back. "What now?" I repeated. "Now you sit with it. With all of it. And I walk away." "Wait," she said, suddenly panicked. "Can we talk alone? Just give me a chance to explain everything." I didn't answer. I just turned and walked toward the cabin. Behind me, The fire crackled, but no one laughed anymore. No one talked. The group wasn't a group anymore. It was wreckage, and I was finally done pretending to rebuild it. The cabin was cold the next morning. That mountain kind of cold that finds the cracks in your armor and settles deep in your bones. I was the first one up. I knew I would be. I hadn't slept, not really. Just laid there, eyes open, listening to the quiet breaths of the sleeping house, waiting for something to feel different. But everything still hurt. The fire was long out, just embers and blackened logs in the pit outside. The smell of char lingered in the air, mixing with pine and old bourbon. I stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun creep over the ridge. No birds, no wind, just quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a wreck. Inside, the others began to stir. I heard Jenna's voice first, hushed and sharp. Kara's laugh was gone. Tom sounded like he had a hangover that could break a man in half. I didn't see Chase again. He packed up sometime during the night. The empty driveway told the story. One set of tire tracks down the dirt road, already dusted over by fallen pine needles. No note. No bouvier. Coward. Brooke knocked on the door of the room, I claimed. Gentle. Hesitant. Adam. Her voice was hoarse. Raw. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the knot in the wood of the floorboards instead. It looked like a split heart. She knocked again. Please, can we talk? I opened the door. She looked worse than I expected, like someone who'd been crying for hours, but still had more tears left. No muck-up. Eyes puffy. Hoodie sleeves pulled down over her fists. 5 minutes, I said. No lies. No didates. She nodded and stepped inside. We sat across from each other on the edge of the bed, knees almost touching but not quite. The air between us was thick with everything that hadn't been said for years. I didn't know how to stop it, she said softly. That's the part that scares me. She swallowed. He was always there, in my head. Not every day, but when things got hard between us or when I felt unseen, it was like he slipped back in. Like he never left. I didn't flinch. Did you love him? I asked. Yes, she whispered. In some way. I think I always did. And me? Her eyes filled again. Yes, differently, but just as deeply. I shook my head. Don't do that. Don't dress this in sentimentality now. You don't get to tell me the betrayal was romantic. She looked away. I could have forgiven an old flame, I said. But this wasn't a spark. This was a sustained fire. You fed it, protected it, for years. I was afraid, she said, that if I let him go completely, I'd lose the part of myself I was before we got married. And what about us? I asked. What about the part of me I lost while loving someone who was still halfway gone? She didn't answer, just sat there, silent and shivering. I wanted to fix us, I said finally. I thought maybe this weekend was a chance. But now, I see it for what it really was. A stage, she said softly. I nodded, and the final act played out exactly how it had to. When she reached for my hand, I didn't pull away, but I didn't close my fingers around hers either. Her palm was warm, familiar, but it felt like touching a grave. I don't hate you, I said. That would be easier. Her voice broke. What do you want to do? I'm not sure yet, I replied, but I know what I can't do anymore, which is keep pretending the love we had is still here. That was when the tears finally came again. No loud sobs, just a steady stream, quiet and broken. I stood up, packed the last of my things in silence. She didn't stop me. Outside, the others were lingering, uncomfortable, tired, uncertain how to navigate the debris left behind. Jenna hugged me. Kara didn't make eye contact. Tom muttered something about needing to take a break from people for a while. The group was over. Not just fractured. Finished. Brooke didn't follow me out. She watched from the window, arms wrapped around herself, eyes hollow. I didn't wave. Didn't offer one last look. Some endings don't need dramatics. Just distance. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen. The house felt different. Like it had grown colder while we were gone. Quieter. Almost haunted. I poured myself a drink. Then I opened my phone. There were 3 unread messages from Brooke. All short. Please don't block me. Can we talk again soon? I miss you already. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I let the silence be mine. And for once, it didn't feel empty. It felt like clarity. 3 weeks passed. No dramatic declarations. No despritepallegis. Just silence. The kind that creeps into your bones at night when the house is too quiet and you realize no one's coming up the stairs to meet you in bed anymore. Brooke moved in with her sister temporarily. She asked if we could meet. I didn't answer. She asked if we could start small. Still no answer. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of trying to fix a marriage I hadn't realized was built on the fault lines of someone else's unfinished story. And so, on a gray Sunday morning, I drove back to the place where it all began. The garden. The same one where we'd attended that fateful party. The one where she'd danced with Chase under fairy lights. Where I'd started to feel invisible in my own life. It was quiet now. No party. No music. Just damp grass and a wind that tugged gently at the branches. I found the bench where I'd sat that night, glass of wine in hand, watching my wife laugh like she belonged to someone else. I sat there again. Older now. Heavier. Not in body, in soul. I pulled the final letter from my coat pocket. The one I hadn't read. The one I'd left sealed in the bottom of the box all this time. It was dated 4 months after our wedding. The handwriting was the same. The ink darker. No es murgis. No hesitation. I unfolded it slowly, bracing myself for another gut punch. And then I read, "You looked beautiful at the wedding. I know I shouldn't have come, but I had to see it. See you. See the choice you made. But when I watched you walk down the aisle, all I could think was, she's still mine. She doesn't know it yet, but she is. Even with his ring on her finger. You'll come back to me eventually. We don't end, Brooke. We just pause. Yours always, C." I sat there for a long time after I finished. The words didn't hurt like I thought they would. No, they confirmed something I already knew. Something I'd been afraid to accept. I was never the only one in her heart. Maybe not even the first. Certainly not the last. I stood up, walked to the pond at the far edge of the garden. The one with lily pads floating like little green lies on the surface. I held the letter for one last second, then let it go. It drifted down softly, landing like a feather on the water, the ink already starting to bleed. Soak the past in truth, I thought, and let it sink. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't turn on the radio to distract myself. I just breathed, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like the air was poisoned. Brooke texted me again that night. She must have sensed something shift. "I had a dream you forgave me." I read it once, then deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't need to carry it anymore. Forgiveness wasn't for her. It was for me. A month later, the divorce papers were filed. It was quiet. No courtroom drama. No fights over furniture or mutual friends. We both just let go. And in that final moment, when we signed our names at opposite ends of the page, Brooke looked up at me, eyes rimmed with sadness but also something softer. Relief, maybe. Or maybe just the realization that this time, there really was no letter coming. No Chase to crawl back to. No story to rewrite. Just the end. And as I walked out of that lawyer's office, I realized something. Sometimes closure doesn't come with answers. It comes with absence. With choosing peace over pain. With watching the last lie sink in a garden pond and deciding never to dive in after it. And that was enough.